There has been one clear weakness with Nick Caserio at GM when it comes to his decision making, but can he fix it? Welcome back to the Texans Better Talk Show. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more daily Texans content. You will not regret it. Let's get right into this. Now, Nick Caserio's decisions regarding the offensive line haven't always been perfect. In fact, I would argue they've been far from it. Let's get right into this and let's start talking about Nick Caserio's draft picks. Now, if you'll remember, Nick Caserio became the general manager for the Texans July 6th, 2021. In that 2021 draft, he didn't have a first round pick, he didn't have a second round pick. His first selection was Davis Mills, the quarterback, at that third round spot. So, no linemen were taken in the first year. Now, in 2022, he drafts Kenyon Green, 15th overall in the first round. Now, this is probably the biggest blemish, and maybe one of the times we should have kind of raised our eyebrows a little bit more at Nick Caserio's decision. Now, I'm not going to lie to you, Kenyon Green had a very nice prospect profile. His size, his strength, he was really meant to be that run blocking type of guy. Unfortunately, none of it panned out in about the worst way possible. Kenyon Green was unplayable this 2024 season. And I don't mean like the Texans didn't play him. I just mean he was unplayable. In fact, the Texans played him all the way until injury forced them to take him off the field. And in all aspects of playing the position, the IQ, the technique, the communication, Kenyon Green was extremely bad at it. He gave up a whopping 5 sacks at the guard position, which is a lot, and he only started 9 games. Easily considered one of the biggest busts in that first round in that 2022 draft class. That is the Kenyon Green experience. But moving forward to 2023, Nick Caserio gets to the draft board. Who does he select? Well, he drafts Juice Scruggs in the second round. He also goes on to draft Jarrett Patterson in the sixth round. Both of those are centers. That's what they were in college. And usually centers don't move around as much. They can, but he drafted 2 centers, which is fine. Get the depth at the line. That's okay. Best available in the sixth round. We're not going to be, tearing apart a guy for a pick he made in the sixth round. However, Juice Scruggs was considered by many to be a fourth round pick, maybe a late third round pick. But I don't necessarily have an issue with that. I mean, most people saw Kenyon Green as a first round pick. So you don't have to go with what everyone says, but if you're going against the grain, you need to be right. And I'm not going to completely just ignore Juice Scruggs, but I'm also not going to ignore his deficiencies. He has not played and been a valuable second round pick. Injuries kind of derailed his rookie season. He was injured for a majority of the season. He faced several instances where he had to play right guard. For instance, when Shaq Mason got hurt just this past year, Juice Scruggs himself also saw a little bit of, injuries as well. And so by the time Juice Scruggs is playing, he's having to play right guard to sub in for Shaq Mason. And Jarrett Patterson is playing center right next to Juice Scruggs. Now, obviously, Caserio's explanation for this was, well, we know that Juice Scruggs is the better center, but Patterson can't play guard. He didn't say that, don't get me wrong, but that's essentially what he said. We have to roll with kind of a makeshift line. I don't know if Juice Scruggs is much better than Jarrett Patterson. It's not like when Juice Scruggs plays center, he's an all-pro by any means. And you can make the argument that he's been injured. He's had to, really go through some ups and downs his first year as a rookie, and so maybe his second year is more like a rookie year. But that being said, wherever he played, it didn't look amazing. I will say that the best thing that happened to Juice Scruggs was probably finally getting set in that right guard position, but we'll talk about how that ended up in a second. So now let's move on to some more offseason moves, take a step away from the drafts really quick. So in May 2023, before the 2023 season, Caserio extended Shaq Mason 3 years and $36 million. Now this would prove to be a decent contract in 2023. Shaq Mason played okay, then completely fell off a cliff in 2024. In 2024, Shaq Mason made this contract extremely horrid. Terrible run blocking grades, terrible pass blocking grades, gave up a league high 8 sacks at the guard position, only played in 15 games. And here's where we talk about the Juice Scruggs thing. Juice Scruggs is filling in for Shaq Mason at right guard. The moment Shaq Mason gets healthy, they immediately take Juice Scruggs out and they put Shaq Mason in at right guard at the Chiefs' divisional game and he just didn't have it. He gave up so many pressures and so many sacks right down the middle at that guard position. I feel bad for Juice Scruggs. Drew Scruggs should have been the starter. Shaq Mason should have been the backup. And it wasn't even like Shaq Mason had a full day of rest or a few full week of rest, because he didn't. And they just decided to throw him back in there. Now fans are shouting for Shaq Mason to be traded or cut. And honestly, I get it. I completely understand it. Let's talk about another terrible extension that Nick Caserio oversaw, and that was extending Titus Howard for 3 years and $56 million before the 2023 season started. This was the most unnecessary extension. At least with Shaq Mason, you could say, well, we've seen him be elite before. He was, winning Super Bowls with Tom Brady. He's a great veteran. Titus Howard did not deserve this contract at all. He was injured a large portion of the 2023 season. George Fant ended up taking his place, who arguably performed better at the right tackle spot than Titus Howard did. And again, in 2024, Titus's play at right tackle was not amazing at all. Like I said, he's paid like one of the top 5 best right tackles in football, and that's just laughable considering that, with Kenyon Green playing awful and with Shaq Mason's injury, I mean, you got Titus Howard playing at left guard now. So now he's paid as one of the highest paid left guards, and it's just a horrid contract. We've really handcuffed ourselves, or I should say Caserio has, to this offensive line, and they're not panning out at all. So after they moved the Titus Howard to left guard, rookie Blake Fisher starts. He starts getting in some games. He wasn't supposed to really play this year, but he does get some quality minutes really in some playoff games, especially in that divisional. And I'm not going to lie, I don't think Blake Fisher is a horrible pick. I think the jury's still out. I think he definitely looked bad in the divisional against the Chiefs. When I was watching the game, I can remember seeing 2 sacks that he gave up. But you're going against George Karlaftis, Chris Jones at times. You're a rookie. I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. The thing with Blake Fisher, though, is, and remember, Caserio drafts him in 2024. The thing with Blake Fisher is Caserio drafted Blake Fisher and started a tackle run. Caserio could have picked any offensive lineman on the board, and he chose to pick Blake Fisher. Again, that's fine, but you better be right when you have the whole board at your selection, in the second round. Like, you cannot miss on a position on a tackle when every other guy was available. Unless every other guy is just terrible, like Blake Fisher has to be the best. He has to work out. Otherwise, it's an even bigger blemish on Nick Caserio's offensive line, a resume. So we've harped on Nick Caserio and the offensive line long enough. Now let's talk about how Nick Caserio can fix it. Well, the first thing you have to do is trade Kenyon Green. And I'm not going to sit here and act like there's going to be some huge return on investment with Kenyon Green or some blockbuster trade, but you have to trade Kenyon Green. And I've come up with a couple mock trades that I think could work. Again, none of these are going to be superstars. The thing with Kenyon Green is you have to go find people who have grossly underperformed. That's what I think the trade needs to be. And so let's get straight into this. The first guy I think of is Jalen Reagor. Now, if that name sounds familiar, it's because Jalen Reagor is infamous for being drafted a spot before Justin Jefferson and not living up to the hype at all. Jalen Reagor is a receiver. In the last 3 years, he's been on 3 different teams. He's currently on the Chargers and plans to be a free agent. Here's the thing, though. The Chargers need interior offensive line help. Kenyon Green is a guard. Jalen Reagor is a first-round pick who hasn't panned out. The Texans need receivers. They need people in that receiving room. Why not trade Kenyon Green to the Chargers, help them beef up that interior offensive line, and take Jalen Reagor and just pray you can get something out of him at that receiver position? I think that makes a lot of sense, and that's going to be kind of the mindset I'm going to have going through these mock trades. Similar type trades. So secondly, how about Treylon Burks, the receiver for Tennessee? Treylon Burks, yet another disappointing wide receiver. Rationale is very similar. He's got good size for a receiver, not really a smaller guy. And, many Texans fans will tell you they're kind of sick of the Tank Dell archetype. So go get Treylon Burks. He's extremely athletic, just never really was able to put it together. Oh, and the Tennessee Titans would also use a little bit more offensive line help as well. Finally, the third name on my list. What about Jahan Dotson, who was drafted right after Kenyon Green, 16th overall in the first round in 2022? He's currently on the Eagles, won a Super Bowl ring. He put up 216 yards with them this year. But maybe you can offer up Kenyon Green to the Eagles. I know the Eagles have a stacked offensive line, But a lot of those guys were given up on, and the Eagles' offensive line coach is so good, he can take those projects and he can work on them. Now, if he could do that on the Texans, that would be awesome. We haven't seen it yet, so maybe we do a swap and we get Jahan Dotson, ironically, just jumping back a spot basically in that draft to find Jahan Dotson. So that's kind of my Kenyon Green trade ideas. Now, the next thing you have to do is bench, cut, or trade Shaq Mason. I'll tell you that no one's going to trade for Shaq Mason, not with his performance, not at his price. If you cut Shaq Mason, you lose $2 million before June 1st. If you wait till after June 1st, you can't use that money during free agency. And also, yeah, so I think they're going to bench him or they're going to keep him on the team. I hope they bench him. That's really what this comes down to. And look, the end of the line, he's extremely washed. He cannot be your starting right guard going into the season. You cannot be happy with that. Please, 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 please bench him. Maybe he comes back more in shape, more conditioned. He's got that fire in him. But regardless, you can't roll the dice. You can't take that chance. You have to bench him. And finally, this ties into that. If you're going to bench Shaq Mason, you need to go get another right guard. You need to beef up that lineman room. Go draft a guard. Now, this can be in the first round. I like Armand Membo, the kid from Missouri. He's just awesome. One of my favorite offensive line prospects in this draft. Or maybe wait till the second round and pray Gray Zabel drops down to you. I don't know if he gets down that low, but there are some other good offensive line candidates in the second round. Regardless, you need to go get an offensive lineman in that draft. And that's all I got for this video. So what do you guys think? What do you think about Nick Caserio's weakness and his offensive line evaluation? Do you think it can be fixed? Do you like the suggestions, or what else do you have to offer? That's all I got for this video, guys. I will see you on the next one, man. Peace.